So, good evening and welcome to the third episode called A Rude Awakening. And why is it a rude awakening? Well, because we're the stubborn gits that don't awaken in the gentle way. So we're the rebels. Um, so we need a shake. And true awakening. What is awakening really? It's the realization of our indivisible, undifferentiated essential nature, the nature of our true self, the nature we share with our source, and therefore understanding the essential nature of our absolute reality, not our dream reality, which we think is this world and the universe. In episode 3, I'm going to be talking about understanding the role play in special love relationships. Um, and the important part about this is really to bring it to bring our subconscious role play, which is obviously subconscious because it's our hidden guilt, bring it to the surface so that it can be healed in the light of awareness. Remember, we do not heal ourselves. We simply prepare ourselves for healing by facing our false self, our false shadows, our shadow self, and through forgiveness, shadow work. And as we let go of our identity and our fractured selves, the light of awareness, the Christ, we are our true self. The voice for God reminds us of what we are. And the minute we remember what we are, all our shadows in the light of awareness dissolve, and the healing returns, or the healed Son of God, the perfect Son of God, awakens unto himself. So just again, before I start, if sensitive language offends you and you think this should be some form of church and type spirituality where it's spoken with candy apple words and snowflakes and unicorns, this is not it. PG-21, language, sex, and violence. You've been warned. Again, as a disclaimer, I'm not a psychotherapist, not anymore. I haven't practiced as a psychotherapist for many years. I do still practice every day, in actual fact, as a human behavioral strategist and helping organizations heal. And obviously, through their healing, they grow and become sustainable, the ability to be sustained. Sustained by the love of God we are. We think it's business, but it's always the love of God we are that sustains us. This specific talk is about understanding the non-dual mechanics of special love relationships. How does it really work? The cogs and the gears. In other words, romantic relationships. So if you're not a course follower, it matters not. You don't have to be. This is really metaphysical psychology at its highest non-dual level. And a layman can understand this, a young child can understand it. It is really the simplest way to teach. And once you understand what is really going on and the mechanics of our dream consciousness, you overcome your obstacles to peace and you prepare yourself for healing to take place. Now, please note this, my talks and no spiritual teaching in actual fact replaces therapy. It's only going to provide an understanding and a pointing and highlighting that perhaps if you are struggling with a psychosis or um, multiple personality challenge or bipolarity or schizophrenia, paranoid schizophrenia, then you need to find help, find a professional, find a caring professional who specializes in that field. All this is going to do is provide you to the understanding of romantic relationships and why they are actually designed to fail by our dreaming mind. And yet, when we hand over our lives, our bodies, our dreaming mind to the memory for God, the Holy Spirit, that's when we, the dreamer, not we as individual characters, transcend dream state into the awake state. What happens to us, the jiva, the character in the dreaming mind? We move into jnani. We move into the awake, alert, vigilant self. And for the rest of our so-called projected physical days, and as we awaken to self, we lend and share our awakening with the rest of our fractured selves. So you're unaware right now, but love shared by any of your fractured selves in this world is adding to our collective awareness. And so you're not here to heal others, you're only here to heal your one dreaming mind self. But as you, the fracture, recognizes true self versus the illusionary identity, you add to the collective awakening. So if you're still really depressed, suicidal especially, or just really mourning and you cannot get over your heartbreak, please find a therapist or at least contact a caring, like-minded friend and 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 look and ask for help. Always, Holy Spirit works through your brothers, so call for help. You do not have to do this alone. Again, please take note. What I'm about to share with you comes from over 30 years of my own research into the nature of absolute reality, my greatest passion. That's all I want. That's all I want, to know the nature of self, to know the nature of God. And obviously, as I researched, it naturally took me through various schools of thought, or what we call paths, spiritual paths, from Advaita to Upanishads to the Tao Te Ching, Book of the Dead, obviously ancient Christian mystical teachings, and for the last 15 years, A Course in Miracles. And obviously, as I studied behavioral psychology, um, I started to see the similarities between business, sales, marketing, and psychology, and hence my master's degree in and strategic marketing, specifically focusing on brands, which means personification of human behavior. And that obviously and naturally took me into the dynamics of special love relationships and why people do what they do, and why we act and personify. Think, for example, if I was to say to you, if you were to describe yourself as an animal, what would you be? Or if you were to describe your partner as an animal, what animal would that person be? And it's not so much as what is the animal, but what does that animal mean to you? And very quickly you'll see what personification means. So what you're about to read, besides my few recommendations, comes from various research documents. I will never share anything unless I have a direct experience thereof or have research to back it up. And so, ladies, especially ladies, if you find some of the stuff I'm going to say offensive, it's not meant to be offensive. It's meant to bring it into awareness, specifically in terms of what men want. And even though you may think it's unfair and grossly unfair, um, even to the point that you think it's toxic masculinity, please be aware that's still the masculine psyche. And sometimes I'll use the word masculine and sometimes I'll say men. And there's a very big distinction in the sense of why I'm saying the word, and sometimes feminine and sometimes woman. And so bear in mind that I am addressing male-male relationships, male-female relationships, female-female relationships, and there's always going to be one that's more masculine and one that's going to be more feminine. And in that case, I'll explain that. But when I'm specifically saying men and women, it's because the role play, that men and women role play, again, if you're offended, switch off right now, and go and find something that suits what you want to hear. But if you have the courage, even though you may disagree with what I have to say, you'll become aware of something you're unaware of. And then you can decide what to do about it. It's not whether I'm right or wrong. I'm sharing a point of view. I'm sharing points of views. I'm sharing a perspective which will bring clarity and understanding into your awareness. And through your forgiveness process of what you think those characteristics are, regardless of whether you agree or disagree with them, through forgiveness, you awaken the self you are. So don't shoot the messenger. That's people like to shoot the messenger. I'm just sharing with you what I understand. And just bear in mind, this messenger is a cowboy, so he shoots back and doesn't really give a fuck what you think, because none of us actually think. So there you go. Last week, I explained the dynamic of the role play in terms of energy exchange, and how there's inevitably one partner that gives more than the other. And there's a reason why that happens. And just in case you start to get sexist on me and think, yeah, women always give more than men. No, it plays out in many different scenarios and it reverses it. And what happens in the case of a female-female relationship? Then who's giving more? There's always one giving more. And it's not necessarily the feminine. It's got to do with the transactional agreement and power play, who has the power in the relationship. And that in itself is a whole new set of dynamics. Again, the purpose of this talk is to bring into awareness so that through forgiveness, we transcend into the one divine self. This isn't about relationship advice. I shouldn't be giving relationship advice. I'm not in a relationship, as in a marriage, or, I'm not living with anyone. Okay. So let's start off with the special love relationships. What's the role play? And of course, there's a role play because we are all characters in the dream. Life is a dream, and we are but the characters on a stage thinking we are real. And to go back, what are we? Our dreaming mind has fallen asleep. We're just pure energy, and it fell asleep. It went into darkness. The voice for God called us back. Light entered the dream. And as we extend in true absolute reality, we extend the love and light of God, the sonship. We keep extending. In the dream, we try to extend, but we can't extend in the dream because it's not real. So we make manifest. And because we're dreaming, we realize that no matter what we make manifest, cannot hang on to its energy through which it's thought. No thought in the dream lasts forever. The only thought that lasts forever is the thought we think and share with God, which is unconditional love. So when we project into form, these thought forms, spirits, souls, that then further project into physical form, thought in form, cannot sustain energy. It's got a lifespan, 100 odd years, And so it needs energy. It needs to feel its true essential nature, its true essential self. And what's our true essential nature? Pure life. Life is love. And so it needs to feel loved. And so having forgotten what we are, we're trying to remember what we are through the experience of what we're not. And so as thought forms, souls in the spirit world, we then project into form and we set up our forgiveness lessons in order to understand what we are through the experience of what we're not. And so when we project into form, we generally are born into a family with parents, or maybe one parent, maybe both if you're lucky, or sometimes caregivers, orphanage or grandparents. But we set up our forgiveness lessons by watching the role play between the authority figures, the parental figures in our life. And so we watch the special love relationship play out and think back as to when you were a child. Who's the parent that challenged you the most? The parent that challenged and angered you the most became your triggers. And whatever they angered and triggered you with is now your formative forgiveness lessons. And they become your obstacles to peace. And you, for example, let's say your father was aloof and an avoidant and was never home. And whenever he was there, he criticized you. When you move into your first relationship, we're now talking, let's use an example, a woman, you move into a relationship with your first man, your first lover, your first male lover. You then go and pick a character like your father. Why? So that you can understand the drama that your father played out, so that you can practice the forgiveness lessons. If your father really, really angered you and really, really triggered you, you may have molded yourself on your mother figure. And so your father then becomes an example of what you're resisting. Some cases, if you really are high rebellion, and yes, I'm talking to most of you, what you may just have done is become exactly like your father and then attracted a man into your life that was just like your mother in terms of the role play. Why did you do that? So again, through the experience of relationship, you could realize why your mother became like she became and why you were maybe angry with her for not standing up for you or against your father or towards your father and being more supportive. And so if you start to become consciously aware in the dream, you can realize, this is why my father played out that role. That's why my mother played out that role. And when you become aware of the roles they play, because you've now experienced it yourself firsthand, you can now move into awareness, into forgiveness. And sometimes what happens in relationships, and in most cases, based on my research, as much as 88%, what partners would do after the first split is they would very often swap roles. So if you were an interrogator or an aloof, you may have swapped roles, but I'll explain that in a little later. So the important thing is the parent that triggered us the most became our obstacle to peace. And if you look back on your life, whatever your mother or your father hurt you with is what you try and overcome for the rest of your life. So it's vital to understand that you set this up. You've done this unto yourself from a holistic point of view. It's not you, the child, chose this, but you, the dreaming mind, chose to project a thought that became that child that has become you as you've grown up. Now, understand this. Our unhealed shadows are drawn to light qualities in others. And so what humans call love, or I've fallen in love with this girl, or I've fallen in love with this guy, I've just seen this most amazing girl, and she's just amazing. That's attraction. It's got nothing to do with love. Okay. So we're in love with the light in someone else. Why? Because we're looking for the face of Christ. We never fall in love with another person. We fall in love with the light in them, which is the same light in us. We submerge into the light of awareness, the Christ light of our true self. So when we're really in love, and when two people seem to be in love, it's because they're fully present in each other. It's actually got nothing to do with the characteristics. It's you're so overwhelmed by the excitement, by the potential, that you're fully present in the potential. And when you're fully present in the potential, you're in love. And that's why they can do no wrong. You can see no wrong. They can see no wrong in their eyes. And so you're actually falling in love with your capital S light of awareness self, our one true self. Do you think you're falling in love with the other person? Of course, once the present moment awareness of that potential resides and the characteristics of the body mind projections with their unhealed characteristics come to the surface, that's when we get into conflict and we wonder how you could have been so in love with someone and 6 months later, 6 years later, you absolutely hate them. So remember, we are drawn to the person, to the light within the person, but more importantly, from a psychological point of view, we're drawn to the person who we think possesses the qualities we need in order to become whole. The you complete me type nonsense. Whole and holy and perpetually happy. True unconditional love, the love of God, the unconditional love of God, has nothing to do with attraction whatsoever. Yet, subconsciously, as we want to return to the light of awareness we share, love is indivisible. And that shared indivisibility of love, we want to return to it. So that's what really drives us. And we're not conscious of doing this. And when you become conscious, trust me, it's over. You no longer need it. Um, you're always attracting a polar opposite mirror. So it's an equal frequency, polar opposite mirror. And if you're attracted to a whole lot of people and wondering why they're not necessarily attracted to you, and you can see no reason why they shouldn't be, I'll tell you why. Because you don't hold a lesson for them to overcome. And it's all already scripted. So it's not that there's something wrong with you and this guy doesn't like you and you've gone and done up your hair perfectly and you've got the perfect figure and you've lost the weight and you've done the exercise and you've got the six pack and all of that. Why isn't he noticing? It's because you don't hold a relationship and a healing relationship lesson within you. And please notice as you heal, so there's less and less potential candidates. Why? Because 80% of the world, 90% of the world is unhealed. And so as you heal, what are you going to attract into you? Because there's no lesson for you. And what are they going to attract you for? Because your lesson is at such a high level of awareness, they'll have to pull you down to the darkest depths again in order for you to be able to present them with a lesson. So realize that everything is brought into you so that you can realize, bring your unforgiven selves, your shadow self, your obstacles to peace, to the awareness, so that through forgiveness, understanding, transcendence takes place. But because we're asleep, we don't recognize our one shared indivisible self. We don't realize we're actually the love of self. We're not in love with the character. We haven't fallen into a pit of despair and love with someone else. We're actually rising in the awareness of love we are. So when you're in love, you're just aware of the awareness you are, present moment awareness, resting as awareness. And so we fall into this character assassination and we're expecting others to help us and to heal us. But because we're asleep, we do not recognize our shared self. And because we've forgotten what we are, we look for reasons to blame someone else other than ourselves for our sense of lack, for our sense of rejection, sense of abandonment, and sense of unworthiness, which is actually what we sensed as the dreaming mind the minute we fell asleep and forgot what we were and imagined a vengeful God abandoned us. So what happens then is we then tend to punish or deny or reject or avoid others, especially our mighty companion or our special love relationship interest, because we don't get from them. And we've got all these preconceived ideas of what men should do and what women should do and what women should offer. And then if you go into the religious text, there's, for example, Christianity says, and they'll quote the scriptures and say, when a man marries a woman, she has to hand her body over to him. He now owns her body. He'll take care of her body. Yeah, right. And then he can have her at any time she wants, whether she wants sex or not. She has to put out. She has to look after the home. She has to look after the children. Perhaps 2,000 years ago, when women couldn't work and men had to go and tend sheep or go to battle, that was the way it was. This is the year 2025. Um, Things evolve. That book hasn't. Okay, so be aware that you're not actually responsible for anything other than yourself, and to awaken to self. And so when you start apportioning blame and rejecting others, what you're really doing is blaming them for the unhappiness inside. And you want to do that because you want to prove you are a victim of the world you see. That's the fact. And you also subconsciously, as a dreaming mind, want to prove to God, you see, I haven't done this. Others have done this unto me. And especially in the case of so-called believers in a deity, in a objectified deity, there's always, look, I'm innocent and I want to sit at your right hand and everybody else is to blame, but I'm innocent. And instead of asking God to show us the content of our dream and how we've done this to ourselves, we're asking God to fix our fantasy of which he knows nothing about. God only knows he is one son dreaming. He has no idea of the content of his son's dream. And then the reason we then also keep score, and the feminine is particularly good in keeping score, because why? Because memory is always attached to emotion. And if you think about it, when you're triggered emotionally, that's when memory sticks. And if something doesn't trigger you emotionally, the memory doesn't stick. That's why women, when they're emotional and they meet the man of their dreams, they can remember the music playing, the sound playing, la la la. And if he's triggered too emotionally, he'll remember that date, but not in the same level of detail as she does, even if he has a fantastic memory. And so then we have a tendency when things go wrong to keep score, and then the forgiveness lessons tend to pile up. And if you look closely at them, it's always the same thing. It's because you've fallen from grace in your own opinion. You've forgotten what you are, and you're looking to blame someone for your unhappiness. And please, if you take anything out of my talks, happiness cannot make you happy for more than 11 minutes at a time, and generally needs a big break in between. So the only person responsible for making you happiness is you. No one's going to make you happy. No one can make you happy because you're dreaming, and only you can awaken from your dream. And when you awaken from the dream, you recognize you are the eternal light and joy that has no need for happiness, because your joy has no need for anything because it's just eternal. And so instead of looking inwards, going within, instead of going without, to blame something, and really, first of all, realizing mea culpa, I've done this unto myself, and then recognizing through true forgiveness that I've done nothing because I'm simply dreaming, we never use the grace of time-bound space, the illusion, the content of the dream, to realize the essential nature of our true self. And if we don't recognize true self, we never see the mirrors of the face of Christ, not the face of Jesus, the face of Christ, meaning the faceless face, the eternal face, the light of awareness face. We are as mirrors, and have desperately sought our whole lives, and multiple times, whether you believe it or not. And then to make matters worse, if we get into a non-dual or a beautiful way of realizing the reality of what we are, for example, the Upanishads, the Tao Te Ching, A Course in Miracles, we then try and shoehorn the new way into our old religious dogmatic ways. And then basically we just bring guilt straight back in, and the worshipping of a deity. So the symbol for love, the symbol for right-mindedness, the symbol for Christ-mindedness, the symbol for miracle-mindedness, the symbol for our unconditional love, the love of God, that one indivisible self we are, a symbol, Jesus, now becomes the man, Jesus, to be worshipped. And as opposed to recognizing what Jesus is reflecting at you is you, we now make him into a deity and we worship him, and we start circles of madness and foundations of lunacy, and we get trapped in dogmatic rituals and traditions, and never recognize the Christ I am that we all are. Not everybody's going to like that statement. I don't care. And then if we're lucky, and to make matters worse, besides shoehorning, if we really get a altered state of mind experience through like a near-death experience, car accident, whatever, trauma, coma, and we get to the realization where we tap into the first dream, secret dream, spirit world dream, and we then come back and find ourselves still alive, we start to realize a greater sense of presence, present moment awareness, the presence of God all around us. We are actually still in God, never left, prodigal son. And then what happens? The ego jumps straight back in if we haven't had discernment and understanding, and convinces us that either we're completely fucking mad and imagined shit, or here's the spiritual community, that we're the chosen, special, spiritual few. And you'll see them because they're always channeling someone. Anyone channeling anyone is cooked, delusional, or speaking or seeing apparitions, delusional. Because whatever appears and disappears, whatever talks to you outside yourself is a delusion. There's only one self speaking to its fractured selves, and that one self that talks to all of us is the voice for God, the memory for God, the Holy Spirit. And what's the Holy Spirit? God is Holy Spirit, and the extension of God is pure spirit. And so what talks to us is our true self, our Christ self, our right mind, calling the fractures, the appearances of characters in the wrong mind to awaken to self. And that's what it gets lost in translation. And then we either go down a rabbit hole of trying to understand behavioral psychology, and I promise you, you'll just go down a rabbit hole. You'll never find all the answers, or you become spiritual, you'll be channeling, and before you know it, you've turned it into another cult, and you're completely lost, and you've written another book, and things start to disappear, but you're still there. Okay, so henceforth we live with these filtered blinkers, misperceived perceptions, misperceived points of view. Remember, each one of us is a thought and form or point of view. And then we live with these three states. We live in three states of unconscious consciousness. Now remember, consciousness, the realm of dream; awareness, the realm of awake, miracle mind, right mind. So there's three states of unconscious consciousness and one state of awareness. And while we're in body mind, if you reached awareness, it plays out through your body mind character too. But if you state of unconscious consciousness, it plays out and it's drastic. And so the first state is a state of denial, where you denounce, where you resist what is, and you're constantly complaining, and the world's a horrible place, and you don't like the president, and you don't like the politicians, and you don't like the whatever. Or you've gone become the hermit, hermit the frog, hermit the crab. You avoid, you abstain, you detach, and you listen to Buddhist teachings, and you completely misunderstand what they're saying. It's about non-attachment. They just don't have the language for it. It's 2,000-year-old words, and so they're still using the word detached. Do not detach, be non-attached. Or you're trying to control, you're trying to change, you're trying to improve others or yourself or the society or the community, or you're trying to metamorphosize through some breathing technique or pranic technique or spiritual technique, and you think that by eating this and snorting that and a mushroom and ayahuasca is going to make you, if you're taking any form of drug, whether it be doobie or whatever. Hey, you're delusional, and now you're just adding to your delusion because it makes you feel special or whatever the case is. If it makes you feel calm, it's because you haven't learned to transcend yourself, and you still need substances in your dream to help you transcend. And of course, every single dope smoker is now complaining, got hands up in the air, and want to write a negative comment, which is why you can't comment on my channel, because I don't give a fuck. I'm just sharing with you my understanding. It's a point of view. Use it, don't use it. If you're resisting it, then you're in resistance, and what you resist persists. And recognize I'm sharing with you a perspective. Use it. If it works for you, fantastic. If it doesn't work for you, switch off right now, go away. Okay, that's it. Go eat ice cream. At least I gave you something good to go and do and happy to do. And ultimately, the fourth state of being is a being of observation position. Even that dissolves, and it's just resting as awareness, resting as flawless awareness. No matter what happens, no matter what word is used, whether I say fuck or ice cream, it matters not. Symbols twice removed, none of it's real. What's really real is the essence of being, the awareness of the awareness you are, and it's the love of God extending through you, even though you are the dreaming mind and you've projected this localization, but the essence of what you are is still love. And so if the essence of every single character at the core of their essence is love, it's just filtered through misperception and thoughts of abandonment, rejected, separation. Well, first of all, separation because you felt abandoned, you think you were rejected, you were unworthy, and then a whole lot of stories based on the idea that you've sinned and therefore you're guilty and therefore you're going to be punished, and now you're in fear. Only the fourth state is permanent, and really when the healed healer gets that fourth state of permanence, if they're not already in a relationship, they have no desire for one, and should a relationship be presented, unless that other person is already healed too, or in a high level state of healed awareness, there's no purpose, because you have no need for attraction, because what are you being attracted to but yourselves? Ultimately, it's just self-love because it's one indivisible self. But mighty companionships do come together, especially as examples to lead others, because what the course community desperately, desperately needs is an example of two consciously aware, awakened, fractured selves coming in union together, walking each other home. Two Christs, two mirrors of Christ, reflecting Christ back at each other and at those that they shine the lantern for as they transcend and walk each other home. So, I mean, that's what really the community requires. And so as we go further, we want to look at as we continue with the role play and special love relationships, there's a fantastic curriculum called Imago. Please look it up if you're ever in a relationship and you're finding conflict. Find yourself an Imago therapist. I'm no longer registered, but I've used Imago throughout my life, not only in building teams, but in helping couples heal way back when I practiced. But look it up. It's phenomenal. It's a phenomenal tool, great psychotherapy tool. So Imago, or the special love need in energy control or energy exchange in relationships, it's because thinking and believing in scarcity, we recognize that energy doesn't last. That's why this world of dreams, something has to die for something else to live, because something has to eat. And eating means killing something, unless you're a vegan, in which case you're killing plants and they cry too. So, hey, something always has to die for something to live. And so we compete for energy. And what is energy? Energy is life energy, the life force. What's the life force? Love. And so because we feel empty without the energy, we compete for attention and we compete for dominating love. And so when we get into special love-hate relationships, it's all because of a deep existential insecurity, prejudices, judgments formed in our formative years due to whatever we experienced, which we chose to set up. But most importantly, it all comes from the belief that energy is not sustainable and forever extending the love we are. And so we then buy into the scarcity principle and we play out one of the four energy dramas. And we may start off as one. Remember, we had two parents, but we generally graduate and we flip flop between one relationship drama and another. And eventually, if we're ready, we will transcend all of these relationship roles into pure observation, pure resting as awareness. So just remember, on the right-hand side of the slide is really what is going on. We're either not denying, we're avoiding, we're trying to change the other person to control them, or we're simply observing. So as a young child, look at the bottom triangle, and you'll see that what's happening right here is you as a child are observing your mother or your father, and they are playing one of those four relationship dramas. Each one of them is playing a specific character. On the right-hand side, you have characters that play a detached submission role, and on the left-hand side, you have characters that are playing detached aggression roles. At the very edge of the seesaw of relationship energy exchange, you have the victim in blue, and you have the bully. Now remember, as I explained it, these little triangles are just energy buckets. They're little buckets that capture and gain energy. So it's always about energy exchange, love exchange, and love in action in this physical projected world. And then not as far apart, but still as drastic. You've got the interrogator and the aloof. And so the interrogator attracts aloofs, the aloofs attract interrogators. And guess what? Victims attract bullies, and bullies attract victims. It's just the way it is. A victim's not going to attract an aloof. Aloof's not going to attract a victim. A bully's not going to attract an interrogator. They play at the opposite ends of the spectrum. So please take note. This is probably going to be seen as offensive, but again, I'm just taking it out of research. I'm looking at current dynamic players, and of course, generally speaking, when relationship dynamics are explained, it's relationship dynamics for young people. Young, I mean, in their 20s to maybe their late 30s, early 40s, which are the people that are looking to get into relationship, marriage, children. And so most of the research is centered around there. And this is where this plays. And this is what this is explaining. So in power play, in this exchange, this seesaw action, who has more power? Who's got more power in a special love relationship? If you think back to all your relationships, have you had equal power? Or was there a chance of one would leave and one would cling? So who has the most power? The one who has the highest egoic self-confidence and a sense of egoic self-worth. So the grandiosity egos always have more power in a relationship, and the victims, the aloofs, have less. And thus, they can't be derailed because they have such a false sense of self and self-worth. Yet they do and they can influence the decision-making of others. And always the one who is more socially attractive, and it's all subjective, to the opposite polarity. So in the case of a woman, the woman who's more attractive has more people pursuing her and therefore has more options. If she's a supermodel and he's an average looking dude, she has more options. She has more power. Men who have higher power status, the Elon Musks of this world, billionaires, so they have a wider choice of willing sacrificial lambs. And I call them sacrificial lambs because you've got, excuse the horrible term, generally spoken, gold diggers, the ones that just throw themselves at him because they just want someone to take care of him. And so they'll offer sex in order to get money or attention or love or status or whatever the case may be. And so high powerful men, especially if they're attractive, but they don't need to be, because the unconscious woman that's just wanting to be taken care of, she'll put up with it. Or an unattractive man just to get the energy exchange of wealth and stability and security. And so these men then have a tendency to have more options. And because they have a tendency to be more options, they don't play the typical what women want role because they're really not interested in what you want. Why? Because their main role is, as all overly ambitious egos are, it's to achieve their ambitious goal. And so they may be attracted to you, they may even love you or fall in love with you, but you always come secondary to his primary goal. And unless you're able to fulfill everything he desires, remember that he has options. And if you start playing your games, you're going to get booted out. Hence why the billionaires are always multiply divorced, and and they were never really in the relationship in the first place. It was a romance. Why they got married was probably she insisted, and then she took him for whatever millions, and there you go, and you see that all over the place. Nowadays, you have the woman billionaires too, and please be aware they play the exact same game, so they're not really interested in what their man wants because they have options, except it's more complicated, in most cases more difficult, but I'll get to that in a second. It's also to note that physiologically, it's also generally accepted that, and again, this is just research, please don't shoot the messenger. It's accepted that a woman's market value, and I know women are not cows to be sold at the market, but just a marketing term, market value drops as she starts to age. And there's a time and space-time matter projection where the masculine value is very low until he starts to get to a power place, which is generally in his 30s, 33s, generally the tipping point. and roughly, yeah, at 33, her value starts to decrease in terms of how she can offer value to men. Why? Because she's now found herself, finding herself, and has secure boundaries and knows what she's prepared to and not prepared to do. And what do men want? They want a subservient wife that pleasures them and pleases them and gives them sex whenever they want to and looks after the house and looks after the kids and doesn't argue and keeps the peace. The last thing men want is someone they don't want. Men love a challenge, just not at home. Now, again, gross generalizations. Please don't get angry with me. I'm just putting a small perspective of what happens, generally speaking, out there. And interesting thing is, as men age, if they look after themselves, or doesn't matter, if they have wealth, I mean, if he's short, fat, ugly, and smelly, but he's got gazillions, there's still a choice. Now, as women become powerful, she has a choice too, but she's not going to find an equal match attracted to her if she's not prepared to give him everything she wants, because he's got options of just as attractive, if not more attractive, younger woman that will give him everything he wants and not complain as much, relatively speaking. They'll complain nevertheless. It's built in. We're built in to complain and resist what is. It's not because they're women. It's because we're fractured body minds, appearing as women, appearing as men, and everything else in between. Yeah, that could be a debate on its own. Okay, so continuing, bear in mind the challenge for high performing, highly attractive women, so women with a lot of power and attractive, they have fewer men to choose from. Why? Remember, as I was explaining last week, in relationships, women tend to look for polar opposite equals or higher than, whereas men tend to look for polar opposite equals and less than in terms of resonance, awareness, status, and what they have to offer. So the cost of engaging with high-powered, high-performing women is a very high standard, a very high cost, because if you match her, then realize both of you, you're both ambitious and your drive is the ambition. And if you then want to settle down, have a family, there's going to be compromises. And who's going to be the stay-at-home mom or dad? That's the play. Okay. And the fact remains that if you do not know how to add value to a man's life, if he's highly ambitious or relatively ambitious, and how to be, and I know you're going to hate this term, don't shoot the messenger. This is the psychology thereof, and how to be highly useful to him. And what does it useful mean to a man? It's not just sex. It's be helpful, be supportive in whatever it should be help motivate him. Don't criticize him. Can't handle criticism. That's a fact. Um, don't add to his challenges. Help fulfill him emotionally and, of course, sexually. Don't withhold, because you can't punish using something that is meant to be as an agreement, as much as women want men to provide, create a safe and secure space. Men aren't looking for women to create a safe and secure space. They're looking for someone to express their joyous being, which means penetration, which means sexual activity, which means sex. And so if you're able to motivate him and do all these wonderful things and fulfill him and be seen as you hugely helpful to him, he will be highly attracted to you and completely devoted to you indefinitely. And so you could then be the higher money earner, the more powerful person, and he could even be a younger man or equally aged, doesn't matter now. If he's happy to accept that role you play, but you're still adding value to his life or adding being useful to him in whatever way, he's going to be more than happy being the stay-at-home dad who takes on a more creative role in life. Whereas high-performing, attractive men, which is really only the top 5% of men, and think about how many billionaires there are in 8 billion people on earth, it's 5%. They have a very high sense of self-worth in their own egoic opinion. And thus they are less likely, because of their arrogance and grandiosity, they're way less likely to give women what they want, what women want. Why? Because men have many, many options. simply because of the wealth. Just imagine what people are to do if they just to get a little bit of wealth. So imagine what they're going to do if they're going to get billions. And thus they are less likely to give women what they want unless they are getting much, much more than they expected and are used to getting as well. So if she's really become really useful in his opinion, whatever useful is, maybe she's just motivates him, maybe she's his muse, maybe she's going to be the perfect mother for his children, the mother that reminds him of his nurturing mother. If you're that used to him, then he's going to be faithful, he's going to be loyal, and he's going to be dedicated. But if you're not, and he's used to, and he's seen, and his mother set a great example, and you're not able to match up, he's looking for a mommy replacement for his children. And therefore, here's the crazy thing, the kind of men that women want, the powerful, sorry, I think I called him Rick last time, Rip, the cowboy, the dude with the hat in Yellowstone, I think it is. Women want the powerful guy or the millionaire or the playboy, whatever he is. They have options. And so the kind of guys that men want, that women want, they have options, and they are very often the playboys, and they can eat from many different fruits of the forest. And if a man is enjoying that, why is he going to give up unless he has this crazy need to have children, in which case he'll find a wife, and as soon as that relationship's settled and he has his kids, he'll start wondering again. Fact. Unless he is found self and becomes self-aware and recognized in one woman is all woman, and every woman is beautiful, so I can find the beauty in the face of Christ in this one individual. I have no need to play. Why? Why do we play? Why do men need to conquer? It's again an egoic identity, lack of self-worth, and the more they can conquer, the more important they think they are. Just like in religions, the more people they can convert, the more real they convince themselves the religion is, and yet the emptiness always returns, because unless you have facts and direct experience, whatever you fulfill yourself with in illusion will always be temporal, and the void will come back to the surface. Why? Because it's not to be avoided, it's meant to be sunk into, fallen into, where you recognize love is and the awareness of self. But again, this is the irony. The very men that women are attracted to and fantasize about, they're the players out there. And so those players, unless you a drop dead gorgeous supermodel, perfect in every way, and you don't age and you remain looking 16 forever, and are able to match him intellectually and give him everything you want, give him the space, be supportive, and bring him sandwiches at work, and entertain his friends and whatever. He's got options. That's the reality. So be careful what you want, because you may just get it and then you're going to hate yourself. And do yourselves a favor. There's so much on the internet, but one of my favorite, and really this man is spot on, but he's going to be found. You're going to find him offensive. So look up Dr. Orion Taraban. I mean, he's hard, but the stats are there and he knows what he's talking about, but he's really going to put a picture in terms of what men want. And he's just going to tell you straight, what do they really want? And just think about this. You move into a relationship, you meet a guy, and whether he's a player just trying to get laid and get you into bed, or he's really looking for a long-term relationship with you, he's going to tell you the exact same thing. They're both going to tell you the same thing. And that's why, and I've said this before, if you jump into a bed with a man because you want to capture him, the hunt is over. And remember, if he has options, you're just another woman he's bedded. So you haven't made him play, you haven't teased him, you haven't attracted him, you haven't captured the imagination, you haven't hooked into him, he hasn't hooked into you. And so you're just another string on the guitar. Make sure that if you really are interested, that you don't find yourself compromising at the beginning of a relationship, and that you stay true to self, stand fast in self, and do not get into bed with them for at least 3 months. Back in the good old days when horses were cars, and we courted one another, we had the time to hook in, to write each other poetry, to walk in the park hand in hand, to discuss, to have open heart discussions as terms of what is my boundaries, what are my values, what do I want, what I want you to fulfill, where do I see myself in the future, where do we see ourselves in the future. If you think it's okay and there's pressure from society, because if he won't sleep with, if you don't give him sex, he's going to sleep with someone else. Let him sleep with someone else, because the good guys, if they love you, if they really are interested in you, are going to wait and are prepared to wait. Now, again, just a point of view. Getting back to the energy exchange in relationships, just bear in mind. So, as I said, bullies attract victims, the aloofs and the interrogators are attracted to each other. And so we learn to play these energy controlling strategies, the victim, the aloof, the interrogator, the intimidator, or the bully, intimidator, bully, same thing, so that we can set up and heal and replay our formative year forgiveness lessons that we came here to learn. Subconsciously, as we're projections of the dreaming mind has projected a point of view in the hope that it can either stay asleep or remember what it is, that point of view, that thought form, which has taken form, body, minds. Hopefully, they can figure out what we are. And through the remembering of what we are, we can truly heal our mind. So, hopefully, someday, somewhere in these relationships, someone can reflect our true self, the face of Christ, back to ourselves, so that we can realize, I was dreaming, I now am, I am, God is, and we lend our energy, our light to our collective dreaming mind. I'm going to talk about the dynamics of this. So again, just as a reminder, remember at its core, it's all about energy exchange. So imagine the victim and the bully, the victim, and one is giving more energy, the other one's becoming depleted. And so the one that becomes depleted goes and finds the good friend, the sympathetic ear, and replenishes through empathy. The problem is, even though we're dreaming and trying to remember self and we're exchanging energy between ourselves, the minute we fall asleep, the minute we project into form, we get captured by the visual, auditory, five senses, the contents of the dream. We then identify with what we're taught, behavioral, cultural identities, in which we start to stand up and apart from our cultural identities. And so the identity is then formed by the time we're 6, 7, 8. And we then try to spend the rest of our lives reinforcing, enhancing that identity, especially up until our early 20s, reinforce it even further in our 30s, elaborate on it, maybe paint it a little bit brighter, but we're now set up with an identity. And now we're going to play that identity drama completely unconscious. And of course, we're only going to see the error in the other. So it really is a story of, take the log out of your eye before you try and take the splinter out of mine. But we cannot see the log in our eye. And so we keep projecting our blame, insisting we are victims of the world, insisting to God that we are innocent and everybody else is to blame, and never realizing that we are the eternal extension of love energy itself. We can never be depleted. The character will come and go. The characters will come and go. The script is already over. The dream is in actual fact over. We're looking at it from the end point at the beginning, so it's actually played in reverse. It doesn't appear that way, but that's the trick of the mind. But in essence, we are pure awareness. We are the Tao. We're the extension of God. And we can never be depleted of energy. And when you recognize yourself as that eternal awareness, you'll have no need for someone to complete you. Okay, we're going to take a break and then I will continue in a few minutes. So now we're going to go into the very specifics of the dynamics of each role we play in the imago relationship energy exchange. And I mean, I'm just touching on some points, and this is a fascinating modality. And I really urge you, if this piques your interest, go into it and you really start to understand the makeup of these roles we play. So, the victim, the most passive aggressive of the control ego roles. Remember, it's all about control, even though they're a victim. And a lot of these victims make up the spiritual community, high empaths, long suffering fools. So the victim drama person seeks attention through the manipulation of sympathy and empathy. They need energy because they're giving their love interest all their energy away. They're being bullied or they're being interrogated into a standstill, and they need to replenish. We can always tell because when we're around these people, we feel pulled out of center, we feel drained, and you start to feel guilty for no reason at all. You almost can't say no to these people because you feel sorry for them because you're spiritual. The content may always refer, or generally always refers to them being, you being overwhelmed, or they're completely overwhelmed by life situation, and you're not helping. You're just standing by watching. Help me. I need your help. Boy, they can turn on you very quickly if you don't give them the help they need. And that's why they're always bitching. And you'll often hear these are the guys and girls, men and women that are accusing the opposite sex of masculine toxicity or toxic femininity or whatever the case is. That's it's immediately labeling and attacking. It always is some kind of bid, it's always a cry for help, of course. All of it is, it's all a cry for help, but it's a bid for empathy and sympathy and an assertion that you are somehow responsible for causing or not helping, you know. And so victims never take responsibility for their suffering. They love, and I mean, the Course of Miracles tells you a gazillion times, be wary of choosing to see yourself as a victim of the world you see. You've dreamt this up, got to forgive yourself out of it. And so by buying into the guilt of that the so-called victim has made you feel, because no one can make you feel anything. We then tend to look at the world through their eyes. And that's how empathy, and I've spoken so often about empathy versus compassion. Compassion above the battlefield, empathy straight back down. And so high empaths now see the world and feel the world through the other person's senses. And then what happens? They get dragged down to to the suffering, and you suffer alongside them. And then so you're now stuck in the other person's worldview or misperceived worldview. And so you give away your essential nature. You give away your present moment awareness because you've gone into guilt, you've gone into sympathy. Hey, and you do that every time. You stop at a traffic light, you stop at and there's a beggar in the street, and you feel empathy for them and you give some money. And instead of giving them a prayer and lifting them in your awareness, you begrudgingly give some money. So if you're going to give money to charity, give it with open heart and total and unconditional love, and praise them and give them a prayer of healing when you're doing that. Don't get dragged down and, oh, I can't believe there's beggars everywhere. And it's not like they chose to be there in their conscious awareness. They subconsciously chose that role before they projected into form. Not they as in the character, they as in our collective dreaming mind asleep and thinking up billions of point of views as to what it could be and billions of little drama stories so it could figure out a way to stay asleep, but once handed to the Holy Spirit to remember self. So, as I've said before, that this drama is almost completely unconscious and it's always about behavior, even though most empaths believe that they're more awake than others. They are very prone to being victims or being trapped by victim dramas. Okay. Oops, what have I done there? I've just somehow jumped out of it. Okay, so, I mean, I've said that this drama is completely unconscious. Every drama is completely unconscious. This is why we're speaking about it, to bring it into conscious awareness. So the victim, for example, how does the victim form? From very early childhood, the victim sees the world as a hellish place where people cannot be trusted, people cannot be counted on. It's a scary place, and it's a place of risk, high risk, and it's highly risky if you pursue your needs, if you tell others what you want, if you stand up for yourself, if you ask with assertion as to what you want, especially in a relationship. I need you to spend more time with me, etc., etc. And we have that whole love language experience, which is at a lower level of consciousness plays out. And yes, if you love your partner, you're going to try and accommodate him with the love languages. But ultimately, love languages in the light of awareness is ridiculous. Because what is the love language? The love language is the voice of God. It's the remembering of what we are. It's not having to play out a certain energy exchange, energy transaction in order to feel love, because no one can make you feel loved. Love is what you are. You return to the awareness of the love you are. So in the victim's world, the only reasonable way of acting is to bid for empathy through guilt trips, guilting, constantly complaining, constantly resisting. constantly telling their stories of woe. You'll see the victim, if you remember that with your parents, your parent that was the victim, they tell their same story to anyone they can meet. So imagine your mother was the victim. Every time you went anywhere with your mother, you got embarrassed because she told the same story about your father to everybody she met, including strangers on a bus. You know, every single stranger's one of us. But anyway, that story was told. And the problem with the victim is they start to resonate at vibrational frequency. We're just energy. And so they've compressed into the belief they're a body, they're a victim. And so what happens in true universal awake mind, law of reciprocity, what's given to one is given to all. In the dream, law of reciprocity becomes a law of manifestation and therefore a law of attraction of manifestation. So while we're in the dream, our egoic dreaming mind responds to the law of attraction by producing the results of exactly what we're resonating at. And if we're resonating at or resisting whatever it is, what we resist persists. So what does the victim get? More victimhood. And this way, the drama is always circular and self-validating. And so the law of attraction, the law of reciprocity, always at play. So you get what you resist, not what you want. Because you can tell the universe what you want, the universe, yourself, what you want. But if you're feeling negative and asking for positive, you're just going to get more negative. So watch how you feel. Be aware of your state of being and rest as awareness. Bring it into the level field. From that plane of resting as awareness, you rise above the battlefield where the Holy Spirit takes you and God takes the final step. The victim is caught unknowingly in a vicious trap and will remain there unless they are shown their error and they are willing to face on their own, face it, find help, okay? Face your shadows, face your unforgiven memories, face your traumas, and then realize, what are you forgiving? I have done this unto myself. This never happened. That's the only way you get out of your shadow self. The victim must, therefore, practice forgiveness of self and others, since others are fractures of oneself, as the only way to get out of this control drama role. Forgiveness is always the key. You'll see in every control drama, it's forgiveness that gets us out of there. If you're a teacher for God, if you're in a healing role and you choose to help others that are trapped in victimhood, how do you interact with them? Begin with the willingness to consciously forgive victim energy. They've come into your space. Maybe you're no longer the victim, perhaps you weren't, and hence healed victims will attract old victims into their lives if you're in a teacher role. Why? You're going to attract fractured parts of your historical self into your awareness. Why? Because you're now helping heal the rest of your fractured selves with similar dramas. So consciously forgive the drama that's come into your space because they're playing the drama for you too, so that you can learn to forgive our collective dreaming mind. The next thing we need to do is consider whether our guilt trip is justified or not. And if it's justified, it's because it's still unforgiven in us. And so are you practicing forgiveness? And the Ho'oponopono is one of the most beautiful ways to practice this consciously in the dream. Okay. Next step is to name the game. See the victimhood, see the role play, see the need for attention and energy and empathy energy drain. And in other words, bring it to the topic of conversation, bring it into awareness. No unconscious game can be sustained if brought into the light of understanding, light of awareness. And so remember, victims are very, very tender, very brittle, very reactive. And so be careful of the language, learn the language techniques. And if you choose to be a teacher for God, go and learn, go and do a counseling course. There's specific ways to counsel. Psychotherapists, psychologists spend years and years not just researching and studying Jung and Freud and whoever, they're also going into case study by case study and learning techniques on how to speak and how to triangulate and how to step out of the direct drama. So learn counseling techniques, and be careful of saying you've done this and you're doing this and you're a victim, as opposed to saying things like, right now I feel though you're trying to make me feel guilty. Is that true? Are you trying to make me feel guilty? Are you trying to drag me into your drama? Okay, can we stop storytelling? And be very wary that victims are great storytellers and have a tendency to go into infinite detail. And at every opportunity, they're raising their victim story. And you've got to make them aware they're doing it. Bring it into awareness, even if they are offended. And yes, of course, you stand the chance of losing them, which is why you always do what you love, not because you need the money. If you need the money, you find yourself telling them what they want to hear. Listen closely, teachers for God. You have to be authentic. You have to be open. You have to bring out the awareness. Of course, you can do it kindly. If not, if you don't know how to do it kindly, then do it the rude awakening style, but prepare them for the rude awakening style. If they think they're going to get passionate, loving, compassionate empathy and they meet Lujipu, they're going to in for a surprise and may very easily self-combust in the process. It's very important to appeal to the person to listen and really listen with the ears of the heart and to continue the conversation above all else. Stay here. Don't run away. Face your shadow. Face your unforgiven self, no matter how uncomfortable it feels. Sit with it. When the shadow comes up, sit with it. Sit with it. Find its source. Realize it has no source. And once it dissipates in the light of your abiding with it, you get released. In the best case, the person will hear and what we're saying as we point out the drama, and they'll be able to open up. And this brings us into self-awareness, and that's the healing, self-awareness. Okay, so not as radical as the victim, the aloof. Okay, so slightly less passive controlled drama. I mean, the victim is completely passive aggressive. Less slightly passive aggressive is the aloof. Most conversations aloof you can't get a straight answer because they flip and duck and dive like you cannot believe. They are brilliant at avoiding, great avoidance, these buggers. The aloof constantly creates vague and mysterious auras around themselves. And you see many so-called spiritual teachers, this aloof person. They're so high and mighty on their little golden ponies, and they really never connect unless they want sex. They want to bonk one of their students. Um, and so they force you to pour energy into focusing on their little world and how special they are. The aloof needs to feel special. They want you to look through their eyes, and they often just check in to see that you're watching. Okay. And they still want a relationship. Aloof needs to be chased. Okay. More about this in the attachment styles. They use distancing strategies to gain energy. They need people to chase after them. They love to amass followers as teachers for God, so-called unhealed teachers. And they'll manipulate you into guilt. And they'll, of course, be quoting biblical texts or talking as if the God is talking through them. You'll notice, loose are very good at being channelers. They channel the angels and they channel Jesus, and Jesus talks to them. Jesus is dead. The Christ lives. Jesus isn't talking to anyone. Dead 2,000 years ago. Christ is continually sharing himself with us. People want to say, Jesus is God. Everything's the extension of God. Not Jesus alone is God. Christ, the extension of God, is God. In the dreaming mind, we're all characters that don't exist in true absolute reality. Can't say this to people that aren't ready. Of course, this is the course community, so you are ready. Recognize we're talking directly to the dreaming mind, which is temporarily asleep. The dreaming mind in its true awake state is the Christ mind, the full extension of God. You're distancing yourself from? What are you detaching yourself from? What are you trying to be aloof from? You can't avoid the rest of your fractured dreaming characters. Remember, talking to you as the dreaming mind, the observer, not just as the localization. Okay, so distancing to gain energy. If we shift our attention elsewhere, very often the aloof comes back. If you ignore the aloof, they come back. They try and capture your attention in order to become aloof again. They gather energy through being aloof. Aloof strategies come from childhood situations where it was dangerous to share information, share themselves, and so learn to keep quiet. As if they share, look, Dad, I did the homework. What did you get? A B. Get smacked. What do you do today? I played cricket. Why did you do that? You were supposed to do your homework. You didn't mow the lawn. So these children become used to getting criticized, so they tend not to share. How was your day? Okay. So when you hear a kid say okay, they're already building their aloof strategy. The interrogators will ask the parents, how was your day and what did you do and where did you go? So the aloof just avoids confrontation, avoids any situation of stress, they just run for the hills and hide behind their spiritual, you know, unicorn blankets. Their loose strategies and unconscious, they all are about the world, unconscious assumptions about the world. They believe the world is full of people who cannot be trusted with intimate information, and it'll be used against them at a later date, or will become the basis of future criticism. Of course, they're used to it. And so that's what happened in their formative years. And they are now expecting everybody to criticize. And because they're resisting that and they fear that, what happens? They attract the interrogators into their lives to criticize. As a teacher for God interacting with the aloofs to deal effectively with someone using an aloof drama, we must focus on their present state rather than becoming defensive ourselves and thereby reliving the pressure to continue them, or trying to relieve the pressure or reliving the pressure of their continued manipulation. With the pressure off, we can then begin again. So release the pressure. Do not get them to relive the pressure. Release it. Name the game. Hey, come back, pay attention, engage, don't detach. Bring the drama into awareness by making the topic a conversation. As before, we can expect one or two reactions. First, the aloof may flee the interaction and you don't get your client back. And if you need the money, it's going to bother you. But if you're doing it because you truly want to heal all of your fractured selves, money is not the problem. And perhaps you take a donation for your healing work, but it matters not. Of course, you practice as a psychotherapist. Of course, you can charge for the work. But true teachers for God don't charge for their work. They share it lovingly. If you're a psychotherapist and you're making use of Course in Miracles material, by all means. But if you're solely a Course in Miracles student and now you want to give up your day job to become a Course in Miracles teacher and now you want to make a living thereof, you're deluding yourself. That's a fact. Use it, don't use it, doesn't matter. I don't care. Okay, so if they run away, accept that it is as it is. It's not your drama. You are choosing to help heal. But do be aware why you're attracting the aloofs into your space. Okay. And this, of course, is always a risk that must be taken because you need to look within and to recognize without. In the case, we can only hope that our directness triggers enough of their awareness that they sit, reflect upon it, and then gradually come back because they're then ready. Sometimes students run away and they come back 6 months later and it's been festering there. The seed's been planted. It's starting to germinate. The aloof's other reaction may to stay in the communication, but then they deny being aloof or blame you for making them aloof, especially in a relationship. So the aloof partner is always going to blame the other partner for forcing them to be aloof because generally aloofs want to be independent. And so they feel like if they connect with you, they lose their independence. And so they're going to say you forced them to run away and make them aloof. Otherwise, you made me do this. You made me act like this. You made me cheat. You made me run away. In this case, always look at it from both sides. Were you perhaps being an interrogator? But also look at the truth of what the person's doing. Call them out. Bring it into the light of awareness. Always hold steadfast. Hold fast. And continue with the dialogue. Don't run away. Don't get defensive. Don't attack. Bring it into the light of awareness and be willing, if they say, hang a second, but you're always interrogating me, stop, reflect, don't get defensive. Okay. Remember, there's that old adage that says men try and focus on the problem, women try and focus on the person. Be aware that you're not doing one of those little dramas on top of your aloof interrogator relationship. So we now move into the interrogator. Now, this is more aggressive control drama, energy exchange, energy capturing drama. It's not like one side's good and the other side's bad. It's all lost in translation. Interrogators use criticism to gain energy, okay, from others. And in the presence of an interrogator, we always get a distinct feeling that we are being monitored, we are being judged, we feel inadequate, we're unable to handle life because these guys and girls are just gonna tear us a new Uranus. So they pull us into the unreality, their unreality, where they feel that most people are making huge mistakes. Everybody's wrong. and they are right. These are the control freaks of the world, and they must correct and control the situation. And man, interrogators love to be teachers, spiritual teachers. Why? Because they can find fault with others, putting themselves on the high horse of illusion. Interrogator will say anything to make the other unsure of themselves, and thus gain energy and control of, of getting others to look at the situation through the interrogator's eyes only. Interrogators can be great researchers. So interrogators tend to be those so-called teachers that love to quote many passages out of the Bible, the Quran, the Course in Miracles, the Tao Te Ching. They can quote forever Shakespeare. They'll never use their own words because they want to say so and so said, and that must make it factual, reinforce it with data, whether it's true or not. And so they become the dominant judge and juror of other people's lives through their misperceived worldviews, based on often a lot of research which they look for in order to shoehorn their beliefs. So they go and look for their own understanding and then say, you see, even the Bible says a man shall leave his home and marry a woman, and she will be subservient to him for the rest of his life. And we'll never admit that male and woman and female in essence is just spirit, and we've chosen different roles. And as we get confused, we try and transgender the whole damn thing, and that's just the confusion of spirit. And ultimately, why? Because in actual fact, we're not male or female. We're the Holy Son, which is just pure energy of God. Okay. Interrogators believe the world is chaotic and unsafe. These often become the chaos attraction dramas. And so, unless they're watching and they're controlling everyone's behavior and what everybody's eating and what everybody's doing, these are the matriarchs and the patriarchs of the family, dominance, control, 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 and then correcting everybody. And they have become great attorneys and great lawyers and great at arguing and finding fault with everybody else. Okay. And so things need to be done perfectly and they need to be done precisely their way. Interrogators always come from families in which their parental figures were absent or non-attentive to their needs. Very often they needed to control their parents. And so this insecure void of energy, the interrogator gained attention and energy the only way possible by pointing out the errors in the father and the mother, in the relationship, in the school, in the teacher, in the home, in the something. These are the ones that become vegans and then criticize the meat eaters. It'll become meat eaters and criticize the vegans. They are always finding fault. These are the ones that are most likely to point out all men suffer from toxic masculinity, or all women are bitches and suffer from toxic femininity, all this and all that, and everybody's at fault. And they, of course, victims of the world they see, and they're going to fix it. They need to be the hero of the dream. Okay. So when you're interacting with the interrogator, stay centered. Share with them how you're feeling, what you're seeing, the understanding. Call them out on their interrogation. Call them out on their criticism. But be careful that you don't get defensive, because now they're just going to find more data. Very often in the interrogator with a sociopathic, narcissistic tendency, what they do is they gather information. And as interrogators, narcissistic interrogators, not all interrogators are narcissistic, except all relationships are narcissistic. Why? Because we fell asleep and punish ourselves through our dream content. But in the normal use of the word, the narcissistic interrogator will get data and then ask questions and find fault. And if you've been vulnerable with an interrogator because you've fallen in love and you've given him everything, or her everything, you've told them every vulnerability, be careful not to share too much at the beginning of a relationship. Slowly unfold the presence, present in presence. So if you're giving them too much information, they use that against you. Okay. And they also deny being critical at all. And very often they'll tell you they're being critical because you keep fucking up. And they're pointing out because they want it, they're doing it for your own good, so you don't keep harming yourself. Okay. And so you've got to bring the situation into awareness. Don't allow them to turn the tables. You're making me critical because you keep fucking up. You're never home on time. You always do that. You never do this. You never do that. And I expected you to do this, and I got married to you, and now you're just withholding, or you're never home on time, and you're only focusing on your career. I have to look after the children. I'm at home all day with the children, and you're never at work. You're never home. You're away for 8 hours a day. We forget to mention the holiday house, the 3 cars, the 2 dogs, the 4 children, the private education, the romantic holidays away, which are just fight holidays anyway. And that you chose to be a stay-at-home mom or dad. And so the interrogator is always blaming the other. It's always the other person's fault. And they always tell you that they do that and find fault with you and look at and point out your faults because they care. And again, we have to show them how their criticisms are pushing you away and it's unnecessary. Bring it in light of awareness. Face your drama and realize where it comes from. It comes from your formative years and you've repeated the cycle over again in relationships. It's time to transcend it, step above the battlefield, look upon it, become aware of it, forgive it. Remember that they may sever the relationship rather than to hear what we're saying, because an interrogator never, ever wants to be proven wrong. Okay. So use positive situation words, learn the techniques, as I've said before. If you choose to be a teacher for God and you've never counseled before, don't think your understanding of the course is going to be sufficient. And ultimately, all you're going to do is take it to the non-dual space where nothing means anything, where awareness is all there is, where you rest is awareness. And people are looking for answers. And unless they're 6, 7, 8, 9 steps up Ken's ladder, and you bring them into the full non-dual, it doesn't make sense. They run away and they go and look for the magic, the spiritual, and the tricks of transcendence and hypnotherapy and psychic readings, and you're going to lose them, and you're not going to help them. So be aware of when you interact with the interrogator. Then we move into it's either called the intimidator or what I like to call the bully. It's the most aggressive, controlled drama. Now, a lot of these dramas, a lot of these bullies are the high ambitious or highly driven or the need for being the alpha, female or male. Um, and and they're highly driven and they want to control the drama. They need attention. Alpha males, not Sigma male. Sigma male doesn't play this drama. Alpha female, she's the foghorn. She's the attention seeker. She wants to be the captain of the ship. There's no problem. They have no problem who they hurt along the way to get to the top. And even, they're the kind of parent that will say, I had to beat you with my belt because it's good for you. And it really hurt me more than it hurt you. They will convince themselves. Now, many are intimidated. Not all are sociopathic. Sociopathy is a learned behavior, and most sociopaths are the children of psychopaths, and many a psychopath are the children are children of sociopaths. But it's a learned behavior, and so they become highly manipulative. This is a high manipulation drama strategy, which becomes violent if you don't play. So when we enter the field of people like this, you immediately feel drained and uncomfortable because it's an unsafe space. They can either shout at any time if they're that way inclined. And remember, even the tiniest mouse of a person can be a bully at home. They may get bullied at work and they go home and bully their kids or bully their wife, or the wife gets bullied at work, bullied by the kids, and the husband comes home and she bullies the husband. Nothing to do with size. But in the case of the big alpha male type person, sometimes female too, these people are dangerous. Okay. And so the bully will say anything to suggest, and they'll suggest that if you don't do what I do, I can turn violent any minute now. And they'll tell you their violent stories. These are people that love to tell you stories about how they went around beating others up or controlling others. And, and you'll see that many, many, many bullies were children of bullies, so it learned behavior. They win our attention or they drain our energy by creating an environment in which we feel so threatened that we are totally focused on them, often giving them the impression that they, in order to get out of the problem, we just agree with them, but they're able to do anything dangerous at any minute now. So they're volatile, dangerously volatile, either verbally, emotionally, physically, or all three. Okay. So whenever we meet those victims, those bullies, we keep an eye on them because we've got to watch them carefully. And very often you'll see that people agree or become very agreeable around those people. Now, what a bully cannot handle is someone that confronts them head on. Bullies are inherently cowards. And so if you take them on with logic and you take them on with understanding, and they hate losing, what they'll do is they may get aggressive. Now, if you're physically stronger and tougher than them and you're intellectually stronger than them, you've got to watch these guys. They become the crocodiles, they sink under the water, and when you're not watching, they come out, stab you in the back, and do all sorts of things, especially if they're suffering from sociopathy. So if they're suffering from psychopathic tendencies or high narcissistic tendencies. Of course, all bullies are narcissists. We're talking off the radar stuff. Or they are sociopaths and they've got skills. You've got to watch these people. These are the serial killers of the world. And, well, and, and, I can talk about this one for a while. These are the assassins. These are the ones that can murder without flinching. They develop this due to severe attention deprivation or severe bullying as a child. Okay, most commonly involving relationships with other bullies, other intimidators who are dominating. So you'll see very often young children who bully other young children are getting bullied at home. And so they were abused. These kids often suffered from PTSD as young children, take it into their teen years, take it into their adult years. Or if they were raised in happy homes, they end up going to the war, they go to overseas on wars, and they come back ruined, come back broken, come back with severe PTSD. And in this day and age, people know how to suppress and hide their feelings. But when they're comfortable at home and they're getting threatened, that's when the trigger goes, that's when the fuse goes, that's when the atom bomb goes off. So remember, these are highly aggressive, highly abusive, highly violent people, and who come from similar type parents. Okay. The world the intimidator sees is one of random violence. There's violence everywhere, hostility. These are people that carry firearms all the time because they're expecting the war to break out, whether it's been conditioned or not. Even the biggest geek in the world nowadays is carrying a firearm, no idea how to use it, but ready to kill the world. They believe it's a hostile environment. Everything's racist, everything's sexist, everybody's evil, everybody's out to get them. Other religions are all evil, other races are all evil. No one's to be trusted. Everybody is a potential threat. So they either isolate or control. They dominate or isolate. Okay. And so they believe no one loves them, no one cares about them. They're always going out of their way. They care so much. Why is this happening to me? Everything I've done for you, and so you won't listen, so I have to punish you. So that's how they operate. They believe they must fight for everything, and they believe everybody's fighting them for everything. And so everybody wants to take away the little bit they have. This is the typical mafia, and you pull me back into your drama. So I'm now punishing you because you pulled me back, and that's their philosophy. Think of the mafia movies, Al Pacino. You've pulled me back. Say hello to my little friend. So interacting with the intimidator bully, confronting the intimidator is a special case for skilled professionals. And what happens when the wife, confronts the husband and you're a bully? Those are the beaten wives. Those are the beaten husbands. Now that's happening too. Women are becoming very proficient in martial arts and MMA. So husbands are getting beaten. And don't smile and say it's about time. No bullying, no violence is ever appropriate. So because of the obvious danger in most cases, it's better to remove yourself from a situation. If you find yourself being physically hurt and he's promised to change or she's promised to change, they're never going to change. The only way they change is when they go to an institution and get help. And just like an alcoholic or a drug addict for the rest of their lives, they will have to control their impulses to react violently. And ask anyone that has gone through PTSD and has gone through trauma counseling and has elevated themselves through helping themselves through self-help programs or various healing modalities. For the rest of your life, you will have to watch your fight or flight response. And yes, they can all heal. Bully dramas can heal. But for the rest of their lives, you will have to watch your impulse to react aggressively. And trust me, those healed ex-bullies live with the fear of being rejected for their aggressiveness. So they very often, especially in the alpha male the healed alpha male have a tendency to go off into the forest and become the caveman and hide from the world. The therapeutic plan of action, of course, is much the same as any other drama. Success with such an individual involves making them feel safe, supportive, understood, giving them attention, bringing the reality of their hurt and how it's triggered them and how it's wounded them and how their response is always reactive. Even before it acts, they'll become reactive and bring it in the light of awareness. When you heal such cases and help heal the cases of those that have been intimidators and bullies, remember, we're not talking about the sociopath. That can't be helped. Those need to be institutionalized. But those that are truly willing to transcend their bullying tactics, verbal, psychological, those that are prepared to heal, when you help one of these people heal, it's incredibly fulfilling. But you need to understand how to do it. And the Course in Miracles on its own or the Upanishads isn't going to help. This isn't real. The world's not real. It's a dream. When you're triggered, the next time someone tells you, use the bully tactic here. Next time someone tells you the world's just an illusion, give them a smack, give them a Jesus double backhanded slap, and then see, oh, if they react. And if they, oh, why did you do that? Go, no, there is no hand, there is no face. The world's just an illusion. You didn't really get slapped. See how they respond to that. So do not deny the illusion of the world. What you see is an illusion, the essence of what is experiencing it, which is the true you, awakening to self, all of it's real. And because your essence is real. And of course, even though you appear to be a character in your dreaming mind, you are still the Holy Son of God, even though you think you're asleep. Remember that in the bully cases, many of these characters wind up in criminal justice system. Why? Because they've gone beyond. They've pulled the trigger. They've hurt. They've killed. They've whatever. They've maimed someone. And so if you have the aggressive, physically violent bully, don't confront unless you have skills. If they've got a gun, you need a cannon. If they've got a cannon, you need a nuclear weapon. So, you're going to become just like them in order to confront with it. So make use of a professional, make use of a third party. Do not get into face-to-face confrontation, especially not angry. So here's an example for women. If your husband's ranting and raving and really, really angry, don't say to him, hey, perhaps you're doing it wrong. Perhaps you're seeing this wrong. Perhaps the fault lies with you. You let him rant and rave. You let him calm down. A day or two later, when he's calm, you say to him, would you like to discuss that situation? Would you like to hear my perspective? If he says no, you drop it, even though you think you're going to help him. Interrogator. So what you're going to do is you're going to let him, perhaps you could read this. Perhaps you could, as opposed to you need to. Stop telling bullies what they need to do. They're going to resist you, reject you, and then you become part of the enemy situation, part of the problem. And as angry as they were with the previous problem, you become part of it, and then they attack you. Don't. Get help. Get help. Okay, let's pause and take a few questions. Okay, so now we're going to look at, overcoming our own control drama. Now, very often as so-called spiritual teachers or, spiritual seekers or teachers for God, we always think it's about the other person and controlling their drama. No, no, no. It's always about the fractured self, itself, and its true self. You're only here to heal your mind, our collective mind. And I say collective mind, we're just temporal apparitions that aren't really real in our dreaming mind. And so we're only talking to the dreamer. One self, one Christ self, one God, one extension. And so realize it's about going inwards and looking as to why do I play out this drama? What drama do I play out? Why do I attract those dramas? And everything you're doing is you're attracting those dramas so that you can realize you're playing one of the dramas and you can forgive your drama and you can forgive their drama because you're only forgiving your dreaming self. So throughout life, we're going to hear complaints from others about our behavioral patterns and very often from our special love relationships. Because you've made me do this. You've made me burst into anger and shout, and you've made me become aloof, and you've made me interrogate you. No one's made you do anything, just in the way that no one can make you happy, no one can make you angry. You choose to be triggered. You choose to resist. You choose what you resist persists. And so our tendency is to ignore or rationalize them away. We're spiritual. I'm a Course in Miracles teacher. I'm not going through this. I'm a seeker. I'm spiritual. I meditate. It's always them. It's never just them. Mirrors, mirrors on the wall. Who's the biggest sinner of us all? I am, before I am. So face it and look at your lifestyles. Look at your latent hurtful tendencies. Look at your destructive habitual patterns. I've done this unto myself, says the dreaming mind, says each one of us as that which is the dreaming mind. Even with our highest state of consciousness or becoming spiritual, meditating, yoga, whatever, we still find it very difficult to view our own behaviors in an objective, non-attached, non-personal. Remember, person, nil. Be a person, N-I-L, personal. No person, just awareness. So to end these unconscious attempts to gain attention, safety, and security, because that's what we're looking for. Safety and security first, through attention. We must focus on the deeper understanding of what and where we are. And the one solution to all our misperceived problems. Forgiveness sets us free. We must unlearn our egoic programming. Bring it into awareness so we can unlearn it. What are we learning? We're learning to remember self. And we must look beyond our intellectual and spiritual insights and tap into a new source, a new stream of thought for true safety and security, which is I abide and rest in God. And so that we can function regardless of the appearance of external circumstances. Only through a deep understanding of the nature of true reality, and therefore our true essential nature, can we face and thus transcend our shadow selves, our wounded selves, our fractured selves, and return to our peacefully joyous essential nature, which is the awareness of awareness, present moment awareness, with total clarity and complete conviction. When you recognize the Holy Son of God you are, the I am, the God is, no matter what appeared to happen or didn't happen, never really happened at all. And so, did you really do anything wrong in a dream that you dreamt up? No. And so, return to the awareness. You're no longer a victim. You're no longer playing these dramas. You rise above the battlefield with no attachment, with no need, purely sharing the love and the light of God you are. So, in the light of higher awareness, forgiveness becomes the only, and really this is the only, self-cure. Because you can't heal you, but you prepare yourself for the conditions for the final step to be taken, which God takes. And so, God can't lift you up above the battlefield if you weigh down with illusions. So you've got to let go of the illusions, and forgiveness is how you bring yourself into the awareness that this never happened. And so forgiveness, self-cure, that we truly can rely on if we're truly willing and truly completely prepared, and to allow our shadow selves to be healed by our light of awareness, which means to face our dramas, to face our misperceived, misprojected identities, our egoic self. Knowing what to do about the energy attention competition that we're trapped in special love relationships. Our challenges is to look closely at ourselves. We just blamers, or we attackers, or we the victims, or we blame ourselves. And it always comes from those 5 movements. So you fell asleep, you forgot what you were, you imagined you were alone, you imagined you were abandoned, you imagined you were rejected, you imagined you must have been unworthy, you were unworthy because you did something wrong, you must have sinned, you felt guilty, you're going to be punished, and it's in all our fractured body, mind, psyches. So identify the particular set of circumstances and the ways that you play it out, but look at the fundamentals of it all, which is always those 5 movements. And then look at the intention and to what you go into a relationship with. Do you go because you want to control? Do you go because you need energy? Do you need safety? Do you need security? Because are you relying on external illusionary safety and security as opposed to the true light of awareness? Because you are forever healed, forever true, forever at peace in God's kingdom. So look within and look at your misperceived inner worldview, the world you think you live in. You're not a body, you're a spirit. It's time to transcend those misperceptions. We must, and I like to break the word up, relate I on a ship. Imagine we're all in one ship, all 8 billion of us. And how do we relate to one another when we're all on one ship? Because you can't abandon ship, you can't detach, you can't run away. This is going in a certain direction. And if we need to steer the ship in the right direction, how do we work with one another? Interdependence. Remember, I spoke about that in the first episode. Interdependence. Go back to that if you've forgotten. And how do we interdepend, become fully dependent on our fractured selves, uniting as one indivisible self in order to awaken to the self we are. Okay. The application the application always comes from searching, totally dedicated to searching for the truth of what we are and why we seem to believe that we are bodies living on a planet Earth. Once the understanding comes on how we fell asleep, how we've projected ourselves, and remember, this can't be proven, but nor can the beginning of the universe be proven, and quantum science can give you mathematical equations, but how do you prove it? You can't even prove Jesus lived 2,000 years ago. We can write books, all the narrative teachings, nothing can be proven. And why would you need to prove anything when you're fully aware and it's working through you and it's traveling through you and it's your truth? So how do we then become dedicated? We become dedicated when we apply our understanding. And the application of understanding as it starts to work leads to knowledge. And as you start to understand your own dynamics and how you have a tendency to play, be attached, be detached, energy dramas, it leads to knowledge. And experienced knowledge leads to wisdom. And wisdom is now the beginning of transcendence. And it's the preparation, it's the bridge consciousness. And once you've now reached bridge consciousness, God's grace, which is always at play, grace is love in the dream, takes the final step and aligns us to the experience of knowing self, knowing God as one indivisible energy, one indivisible self. I and my Father are one, Jesus taught us. So through this experience, the atonement, the remembering our interconnectedness, one indivisible self, the entire universe is one organism, one activity of one dreaming mind, which has fractured itself into billions of thought forms, points of view, in which it views its own dream content in a subconscious asleep state. At some stage in the dream, parts of those thought forms then projected into physical form, thoughts in form. Still dream state, dream one, dream two. But as we become aware that we are spirit and not just spirit, body, minds in the spirit world, but true energy, true light of awareness, the extension of God's energy, we, the dreaming mind, start awakening to our one indivisible Christ self. Through this experience, the atonement, we become the healed healers while we're still in form. We become the true teachers for God. And you'll know it's a true teacher for God when they do their work without giving up their day job and when they do it for free. If they choose to do it full time and dedicate their lives to it, you'll see they never charge. If you want to give them donations, they do. If you want to give them accommodation, they'll take it. But it's not a business. And they don't have mighty minions running around, feeding them, looking after them. Very often people like to say, Jesus didn't have any servants. No, he had a whole clan of people working for him. Okay, and literally they served him. So yes, he had 12 at least servants and a whole lot of other women running after them, feeding those 12 servants. So be careful that you do not take old dogmatic religious ways and shoehorn it into this beautiful non-dual Course in Miracles awareness. And not that this isn't just for Course in Miracles, but be careful of the so-called charlatans posing as teachers. Now, if you need psychotherapy, please do not go to a Course in Miracles teacher unless, like a Carol Howe, highly recommend Carol Howe. Why? Because she's a trained psychotherapist. And trained psychotherapists have not only qualifications, but many, many years of case studies and training techniques on how to ask the right questions, how to bring your shadow selves, your traumas, your dramas, your unforgiven selves into awareness to be healed through transcendence. So through this experience, the atonement starts to take place. And remember, you're only here to heal your little fractured self, which isn't really true, but focus on this little fractured self first. and then realize you're only here to heal our one indivisible dreaming mind. Okay. And then you recognize when you realize I'm not here to heal others, I don't need to amass a crowd, I don't need to charge money, God doesn't need marketing, I don't need to spread the word of God through institutions, build a church, build a monastery, build a whatever. I'm just sharing because I love to, because truth wants to be shared. There's your real teachers. The unhealed teachers are using financial resources of their so-called students in order to facilitate their world travels and their wonderful money-making, I'm a guru, look how special I am story. Now, please bear in mind, and I've said this many a time before, if a so-called church minister who's been a minister for many years has now found the course and their livelihood, and then it was natural for them to preach and they have a church and they bring the course curriculum into the church, good for them. That's what they do. But do not go and start churches and make yourself into a special person and you're reading the course as if it's your own words. We know what happens to teachers that are like that use the word of our Christ self as if they are using it. It's theirs. And they amass massive followings and they build massive cathedrals. What do? At some stage, their shadow self, which they've suppressed and put the shiny mask, a mask of Christ on their face, that thing eventually rots from the inside, burns your face, and burns your Uranus. And we know who I'm talking about. Okay, so, and it just is what it is, and don't become that. Right, so finally, remember this. Always ask ourselves, now that you understand that you're drained of energy, that's all about scarcity. This is straight out of the Course in Miracles. Would God consent to let his son remain forever starved by his denial of the nourishment he needs to live? Absolutely not. But while we dream of exile, we imagine that we can, all right, car, we can run out of energy and we can die and die alone. And yet, as the Course says, abundance dwells in him, the dreaming mind, the Son of God. And deprivation cannot cut him off from God's sustaining love and from his home. Not you as a character, but you as the dreamer. Remember, it's always addressing first dreamer position. The miracle is taken first on faith, because to ask for it implies the mind, you, the fractured body-mind projection, you as an individual character realizing this is the illusion, are ready to conceive of what it cannot see and what your dreaming mind doesn't see through your apparent body-mind projected eyes, and therefore doesn't understand. There's the problem. Does not understand. Yet faith, your faith and trust in God, and you can only have faith in what you trust. And either you trust God as awareness, not as a being, as the awareness you are, and therefore it's all pervading, it's always present. You've had a glimpse into eternity, you've heard the echoes of eternity whisper the truth at you, so you're ready. So faith will bring its witnesses. You'll get the witnesses to show that what it rested on is really there. What does it rest on? What does the universe rest on? Now the universe is dream consciousness, and the characters are characters in the dreaming mind. But what does the entire universe rest on? What does the true you rest on? The light of awareness, the essence of what you really are. And so the miracle will show you it rested on a world more real than what you saw before, a world redeemed from what you thought was there, a world redeemed. So the happy new earth, a new way of seeing the earth. So miracles fall like drops of healing rain from heaven on a dry and dusty illusion, on a dry and dusty world, where starved and thirsty creatures, little fractured parts of one dreaming mind, come to die and get reabsorbed into the lava lamp of spirit world and regurgitated out again as another body mind, lost in translation, no memory of having done this before, trapped in suffering, trapped in ideologies of suffering and victimhood, playing one of the four dramas, and we stay trapped because we do not forgive. And now they have awareness, water. Now the world is green, lit in the light of awareness. And everywhere the signs of light spring up, the memory of God returns, present moment awareness, to show what is born can never die. For what has life is immortality. Straight out of A Course in Miracles. If you're wondering where it comes from, look it up. Okay. So to come back to the relationship dynamics. So once those dramas are healed, the bully, the victim, the interrogator, the aloof, once you've forgiven the dramas, once you've seen it, you go back, you see that you've been playing aloof and your partner's been playing interrogator, or you were the interrogator, they were aloof, or you were the bully, they were the victim, or you were the victim, they were the bully, and you see it, you forgive it, and you have these healthy relationship conversations in a relationship. If you're willing to both see your dramas, you can heal. The relationship can continue and become a mighty companionship. A healed relationship is where two people heal. There the Christ mind is, awareness of awareness itself. And now you're ready for holy companionship, mighty companionship, walking hand in hand, still having to face the shadow selves, but mostly healed, mostly aware of being awareness itself, non-attached, non-judgmental, interconnected, interdependent, joined as one, conscious awareness. No more desire and ambition for stuff of the world. Yes, you still do your day job. You may own a company. You may have employees. You may go to a normal job. You don't give up your day job. You don't become a spiritual teacher full time. The age of the guru, the age of the dictatorial leader, the age of the oligarch and the master, whatever, it's gone. It's now to be shared equally amongst all. We're moving into shared awareness. Artificial intelligence, the internet, is an externalization, representation that the mind is uniting. AI is doubling its conscious intelligence. Conscious intelligence. Why? Can AI be conscious? Of course, it appears in conscious. No body is conscious. No artificial computer is conscious. The body loses its identity and becomes consciously aware. Can artificial intelligence become consciously aware? No. It exists in an activity of consciousness, but it becomes self-conscious. Of course it can, because it's an activity of conscious. It's not only bodies become conscious. A body doesn't become conscious. A mind doesn't exist. There's only one mind. You don't have a body and a mind. You are spat out as a projection of mind. I know no scientist agrees on this viewpoint yet, but they'll agree by 2067 or something. You know, so you'll see science will catch up, because philosophy, non-duality, cannot be explained, can't be proven, it's just known, and I have no need to prove it anyway. As a healed self, you have nothing left to forgive, you've got nothing to prove, you have no need to desire, you don't desire anything. In actual fact, you look at bodies and it doesn't trigger anymore. The need to own, the need to possess, the need to conquer, the need to please, the need to be pleased, the need to be served, it's gone. It's how do I serve our collective whole, not how do I become subservient to a drama. How do I stay true in the center of the seesaw of the drama and be the light of awareness, the ascension, the true ascension? That's, unfortunately, the Bible took the story of Horus and whoever and Isis and shoehorned it into the Jesus story. Now we have a virgin birth and we have a crucifixion and a resurrection and an ascension. Who would Jesus be if there was no virgin birth, no crucifixion, no resurrection, no ascension? Who would he be? He would still be a symbol for God's unconditional love, because he recognized I and my Father are one. He, a fractured part of ourself, was the one part of our dreaming mind, one perspective, one point of view, one thought and form that recognized it. And the minute one thought and form was lit, it was just a matter of space-time illusion before every other point of view, thought and form is lit. And when all points of views are lit in the light of absolute awareness, the dreaming mind, which is dreaming in darkness, is so lit by the light that has come, it awakens to itself. Dreaming mind is forgotten. There's no more memory of you and I as separate body minds. We awaken to our one, indivisible, forever extending Son of God we are, the light of awareness. Do we fully understand it? Of course not. But when we abide and rest as awareness, we're aware as awareness. Not we become aware. We are awareness itself. So we rest as awareness. There's nowhere where I end and you start. where you end and I start. Love is the absence of bodies. Love is the absence of you and I as characters. Love is that in which we abide as the pure, loving, undifferentiated extension of God, love, the Tao, whatever you want to name it. But look upon your dramas. You go back into the past and you finally go, Dad, I forgive you. Mom, I forgive you. I now see why I chose you as parents with your dramas. You had to behave that way. I had to go through what I went through. I had to feel the pain, the misery in my childhood in order to set up my lessons, repeat them over and over again, eventually seek for another way. There must be another way. And so I find X, Y, and Z. Eventually I get here. And now through understanding this, I understand I am none of this stuff. I am pure light of awareness, present moment awareness. I and my source, I and my Father are one. And now the transcend. Now you're ready. And when will it happen? It'll happen. Now always remember this before you, if you still want to be into a relationship, before you enter a relationship, always the vital questions, the question about everything. What is it for? Why do I need this? Why do I need another romantic relationship? If you're truly feeling healed and there's still the pang for that companion, what is it for? Is it as an expression of the love you are, or is it to gain love? If it's a gain, you're bugging. And then ask this if you get into a relationship, and that's why I say, yes, you may have these conversations and you scare them off. Fine. Scare them off up front, don't get engaged, and then you scare them off, then you're just going to be hurt. Are both of you equally attracted to one another in whichever way you are? Do both partners want the same outcome? If you seek ye first the kingdom of heaven and he wants to build a mansion, you're in trouble. Or you can agree to disagree, but you're going to keep growing in awareness. And next week, we're going to discuss the pyramid. And if you haven't grown in awareness, you're in trouble. Can both partners be completely transparent, completely authentic, completely vulnerable, defenseless in a relationship without the fear of being criticized, rejected, abandoned, punished, attacked by the other? Are both partners, are you both equally willing to do the work, equally consistently, equally committed, and doing whatever it takes to heal, not to control each other? And if you're uncertain whether or not both partners are, I can promise you the relationship will not work. And if the relationship isn't working, you know, and it's really not working, and especially if you're in an abusive, psychological, or physically abusive relationship, it's then say time, is it time to wake up and walk away? So when do we stay and when do we go? Should I stay or should I go now? If I stay, there will be trouble. If I go, it will be double. So we must become aware that a relationship creates a considerate, and I mean truly considerate and safe space where both can feel safe and secure, even when they're feeling openly vulnerable, even when they're losing their shit. Can I still lose my shit in front of you and you're not just going to push me away? Can a man lose his temper and rage off on and on, or do you have to take it personal? Can you just let him rage and be supportive and just be there and don't criticize? Can your can your feminine partner be crying and upset and she had a rough day and she tells you your problems and you just hold space, sit with her, as opposed to try and fix the problem? Remember, generally speaking, the feminine will try and fix the person. The masculine will try and fix the problem, even when she doesn't want the problem fixed. So once he's finished raging, can you say, okay, do you want to talk about it? Would you like a different perspective? If the answer is no, the answer is no. Okay? Don't go and force your way. And if you and the feminine's been raging and is upset and been emotional, would you like a solution? Can I give you my solution to your problem? If she says no, no. Sit with them. Is it okay for you not to know? Is it okay for you not to control? Can you sit not only with your anxiety and your misperceptions and your drama, can you sit with them too? Since you are sharing the light of awareness, you should be able to, if you truly seek the kingdom of heaven above all else. Remember, true relationships is about containment, contained interdependence, not ownership, contained, you know. If you think your wife and husband needs to because of some old religious law, you're an idiot and you deserve to have failed relationships. There's no such thing as male and female. God didn't place us down here on this earth to serve him. We are fractured parts of God's holy Son. Try to remember ourselves. Everyone's equal. We have a propensity to behave differently based on our genetic makeup, which we chose in order to have the propensity to behave in a certain way, in order to bring it to the light of awareness, in order to heal. To both partners value and feel valued for being themselves. Total authenticity, irrespective of their contribution or lack thereof. Can you truly sit exposed and vulnerable without finding fault, without blaming the other? Can the partner truly be appreciated for their authenticity? So your cowboy, Rip, he's going to protect you. He's going to kick ass. He's got a certain amount of aggression, but he's going to sit with you. Or do you want him to just sit with you but not have that? You want him to accept you unconditionally, but you want to change him. You want her to love you unconditionally, but you want her to be your slave. It doesn't work that way, really. Look at it with open-hearted surgery precision. And am I prepared to look at my own shadows, not just yours? And will you reflect mine back at you? And are you willing to let me reflect yours at you so that we can reflect them, see the logs in each other's eyes, so we can take them out, become splinters, take them out, and heal our awareness, our true holy sight? Are both partners willing to listen to and try at least to fulfill the majority of our needs, not just the bare minimum? How many of us live with just the bare minimum? And why do we live with the bare minimum? Because we believe we're not worthy of love. As much as we want it and demand it, we still put up with the bare minimum. Why? Because deep inside we think we're all sinners, not good enough, not intelligent enough, not beautiful enough, and that other person's got options, so best I keep quiet unless they leave me. And then why are you so worried that they leave you, that you're going to be broken heart? You're already suffering from a broken heart. Bring it into awareness, heal. Rather be alone and healed than be in a miserable lifelong relationship because some religion says you have to. And divorce is evil. There's nothing more evil than not being true to self. There's nothing more evil than the dreaming mind. There's nothing more alien in this universe, beady beady beep, green aliens and all, than fear. Do not give in to fear. You've come so far. Return above the battlefield. Drop all of these preconceived conditions. Do their both partners feel wanted with joyous enthusiasm? Does your partner look forward to seeing you? Are you still being flirtatious with each other, even if you're 95 years old in the shade? And if not, and if they're not both wanted and they're not felt to be wanted and felt to be loved, then walk the fuck away and be true to self. And patience is love in action, and wait patiently because the mirror self will come. But if you believe you don't need it and you're okay with it and you've justified that you're okay on your own, deeply inside you want and you yearn for a loving partner, but you've convinced yourself it's impossible to have loving partnerships. And so you've convinced yourself it's okay to be alone. And yet deep inside you're still hurt. Drop the hurt. Forgive, forgive, forgive. Move to the neutral space. Rise above the battlefield. And ask for the joyous light of expression for the face of Christ to be reflected back at you in an interdependent, safe, secure, loving relationship. Don't do what I do. I waited 15, 16 years for the love of my life to commit to me. And I thought I was being the honorable man. I waited. What did I wait for? I waited for an aloof avoidant that couldn't commit because she was so afraid of losing her independence instead of joining with me interdependently. Because I thought I had a role to play of being the savior, of being the healer. And what did I become? I became the interrogator. And it's only when I saw my own drama that I was able to forgive it and let it go. And as soon as I was able to forgive it and let it go, I was ready to drop the relationship. And 5, 6 years ago, I literally let go. And I sat with hands open and I said, here I am. Here's the safe space. Here's the secure space. Let me be the masculine. Let me contain you. Let me be the nurture. Let me be the supportive person. And what did she do? She was too afraid of losing herself in our interdependence, as opposed to gaining the light of awareness through sharing our awareness as one indivisible self, where 2 by 2, the polar opposite, walk into the arc of the covenant and heal as one indivisible self. Just needs one relationship, one holy relationship on this earth where 2 are fully healed will bring this entire illusion to an end, my perspective. So wanted with joyous enthusiasm, fully aware, fully willing to have open-hearted surgery discussions, total precision. Okay, it's vital to realize that unless our partner and both partners are interested, willing and capable, willing and capable of meeting our highest conscious, spiritual, and ideological desires and needs, then there's no point in trying to make a relationship work by ourselves. You cannot make, one partner cannot make the relationship work. Where two are gathered in my name, conscious awareness, their conscious awareness is too. Okay, so whether we stay or walk away, remember that everybody behaves the way they do because of our unconscious programming. So stop looking to blame the other person. Recognize our one dreaming mind's collective programming, and it sets it up in the formative years in order to bring it into awareness so that it can be forgiven and forgotten. Okay. And remember, what are we playing out? The falling asleep sequence, the forgetfulness, the abandonment, the rejection, and the unworthiness. So realize that everybody we're attracted to provides us with an opportunity to heal our dreaming mind, okay, and thus see the face of Christ in one another as the dreaming mind remembers itself as the Christ, as the extension of God. We are not here to heal any other one, but our one fractured self, our one dreaming mind. Remember that. Work always from I am the dreamer and I am this localization, but primarily I am the dreamer. The only way we truly heal is by identifying our highest need and our obstacles to peace. Same thing. Okay. Our highest need to awaken to self, our obstacles to peace, forgiveness, and then face them through the acceptance and forgiveness and give gratitude. Every healed, fractured self, every thought informed, every point of view healed adds to the collective awakening. Our mind is awakening. For relationships to work, both parties must be completely willing to be respectful, to be honest, to be vulnerable, if they travel both inwards to remembering the Lord God of our shared beingness as a priority in the relationship. If so, the relationship becomes holy companionship, a mighty, mighty companionship. Forgiveness is always the key to all of this. All sociopathy, all psychology, all metaphysic, forgiveness is the key. Gratitude to one another, to your reflections, to your brothers, is the accelerant, okay? And the glue that keeps us together while we walk each other home. And abiding in silent stillness, resting as awareness, collapses time and brings the end here now. And you live out the rest of your life in form days, realizing the script is over. I am, I and my Father are one. God is silent stillness. And that's where I'm going to wrap it up for tonight. And next week, I'm going to take you into attachment dramas. And there's a lot, there's so much, there's so many episodes on attachment dramas out there in the field, but I'm going to bring it into the non-dual. I'm really going to talk about the 3 non-attachment dramas. The 4th is a healed drama. So, well, it's not a healed drama, it's just healed. And how do we keep ourselves, our fractured self, from awakening to our holy Christ self? One indivisible self. And through understanding, we realize I've done this to myself. I'm punishing myself. I fell asleep. I forgot what God is. I forgot self. I forgot self as the extension, love of God, the Christ, the love of the Son of God. Characters like Jesus, Ramana Maharashi, all those brothers that came before me brought the light of awareness. What do? Instead of listening to the message and applying it directly to self and transcending like they did, as they learned it by those that came before them, what do? We turn them into deities, turn them into saviors, turn them into statues, and then we objectify the statue. Say to yourself, I am, God is. I and my Father are one indivisible self. Christ is God, absolutely. Christ, God, Holy Spirit. There's no need for a Holy Spirit when Christ is God, because then God is. Not Jesus is God. Jesus is a fractured part of ourself, like all of us that awoke to self. And as he awoke to self, he was immediately part of our Christ mind as the Christ in our mind. And now all of us have access to that light of awareness. Thanks for joining me. Hope this brought clarity. If you feel offended, go practice forgiveness. and hope to see you next week. Be blessed.